Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today we are going to read about stars, and I thought that it would be nice to go into a bit of a kind of a Starlore mythology of stars, etc. But yeah, let's start. The ancient skies. The identification of stars in groups is found among all cultures at all stages of development. Although many groupings belong to the perception of a particular society, curious parallels often occur. According to the astronomer Julius Stahl, it was a widespread tradition among the Native American Indians to see a bear in Alpha, Beta, and Omega of Ursae Majoris, or the Great Bear. The three stars of the handle of the plough or Big Dipper, part of Ursa Major, were seen as three hunters, whereas for classical Greek tradition these form a bear's tail. The bear symbolism can be traced to early origins of the Indian subcontinent, where the seven stars of the plough or Big Dipper were the seven rishis or sages. Rishi was a Sanskrit root meaning bear. Another recurring myth complex of this asterism is its association with a wagon or carriage found in Babylonian representations and also in ancient China. But what was the original impetus behind our mapping and naming of the star fields? Firstly, ancient calendars are lunar rather than solar, and in all probability it was a desire to track the moon that led to the first identification of significant groups of stars. A widespread early development was the tabulation of lunar mentions. These were known in Arabic as al-manazil, in India as Naksh-Sharta, in Hebrew as Mazal Loth, and in China as Hisyu. The mentions are star groups or regions along the ecliptic or in ancient China the equator, by which lunar motion may be tracked. By dividing the path of the moon across the stars into 28 and sometimes 27 sections, it will be seen to cross into a new mansion each night. A second fundamental element of observation is the apparent daily rotation of the sky. An understanding of this was well developed among the greatest of all ancient sky watchers, the priests of the Assyro-Babylonian culture in the fertile region of Mesopotamia. In the Omen text known as Ea, Anu, and Lil, we find the heavens divided into three roads dedicated to the three gods. Ea took the outer road traversed by the stars south of the equator. His son Enlil was given the inner road of the circumpolar stars, while Anu held the middle road around the equator. Along each road, 12 star gods showed the months of the year by their heliacal rising, their first appearances ahead of the sun after a period of being unseen. And at any one time, 18 of the stars would be visible. From the 6th century BCE, Greek civilization assimilated Mesopotamian, Persian, and Egyptian astronomy, astrology, and mythology. Remnants of the equatorial system of Ea, Anu, and Lil became fused into the distinct development of the ecliptic-based zodiac. around the 5th century BCE, and this was the historical basis of all later Western astrology and astronomy. The Greek zodiac also incorporated a key element of earlier lunar observations, as it was a band 6 degrees either side of the sun's path, the ecliptic, covering the maximum swing of the moon above and below that path. The culmination of these endeavors is found in the works of Claudius Ptolemy. Ptolemy, reworking existing data, especially the 2nd century BCE observations of the astronomer Hipparchus, produced a catalogue of more than 1,000 stars visible from Mediterranean lands. He grouped them into 48 constellations, comprising the 12 zodiacal figures, 21 constellations to the north and 15 to the south. Ptolemy's catalogue served as the definitive authority for nearly 1.5 millennia. It was not until the period of European expansion, especially from the 15th century onward, that we find any major additions or amendments, most notably in the mapping of the southern constellations. An astronomical convention in 1930 precisely established the constellation boundaries. Henceforth, any star could be ascribed its proper constellation without confusion. This universal system leaves the Greek stellar figures almost untouched by centuries of celestial exploration. The motion of the stars. The celestial sphere, a projection of the Earth's surface into the sky with the Earth at its center, is a fundamental concept in astronomy. Lines of sight are projected onto it, and measurements of arc between celestial objects are made on the inside surface of this imaginary globe. At any position on the Earth, a horizon circle cuts the sphere into upper visible and lower invisible sections. The astronomical horizon is any horizon circle whose plane cuts through the center of the sphere. We see a close approximation to the notional astronomical horizon at sea and in flat deserts. The point of the celestial sphere directly overhead is the zenith. At the zenith's opposite point of the celestial sphere lies the nadir. A measure above the horizon is termed elevation, and the zenith is by definition at the maximum elevation of 90 degrees, a quarter circle above the horizon. All the stars and planets lying on the sphere appear to rotate around the Earth once every 24 hours. From modern science, we know that it is the Earth's turn on its own polar axis that makes the sky turn. If this polar axis is projected onto the celestial sphere, it pierces it at the celestial poles. The north celestial pole is the zenith for an observer at the Earth's north pole. The south celestial pole is the zenith of the Earth's south pole. Midway between the celestial poles is the celestial equator. During the night, the stars cross the sky above the horizon in circles parallel to the celestial equator. The location of any celestial object, including the stars and planets, can be pinpointed on the celestial sphere in two ways. The system of right accession and declination is equatorial. Right accession, or RA, is measured in 24 hourly sections along the equator. Declination is measured in degrees above or below the equator. The system of the ecliptic. The circle made by the apparent path of the sun measures the positions of stars in celestial longitude, and celestial latitude, north or south of the circle. Both systems begin at 0 degrees Aries. The observer's location on the Earth changes the way in which the sun, moon, and stars appear to rise and set. At the equator, the sphere appears to turn so that stars rise at right angle to the horizon. North or south of the equator, the angle of rising and setting becomes increasingly slanted. Hence, the short twilight and dawn on and near the equator, and the long, slantwise rising and setting of the sun at latitudes towards the poles. The line that joins the north and south poles and runs through the observer's zenith is termed the meridian. This cuts the horizon at right angles to the cardinal points north and south. The meridian is a key to astronomical observation and to timekeeping. As a rising star composes the upper meridian, that part of the meridian above our heads, it is said to culminate. The culmination of the sun, sundial known, is the basis of the ancient measurements of time. The zodiac and precession. The Earth rotates at a tilt to its plane of orbit, and in consequence the celestial equator, a projection of the terrestrial equator, is tilted with respect to the ecliptic at 23 degrees and 26 minutes. For one half of the year the sun is north of the equator, for the other half it is to the south. This variation produces changes in the lengths of day and night, and in the seasons. The ecliptic and celestial equator cross at 2 points 180 degrees apart. These points are called the equinoxes. When the sun arrives at either of these points, day and night are of equal lengths worldwide. After the March equinox, the sun moves north to the equator until it reaches a maximum north declination of 23 degrees at the solstice, or standstill, when the sun is at its highest and lowest positions in the sky for the year, around June 22nd. It then drops towards the September equinox, crosses south to the equator, and moves towards its maximum south declination of 23 degrees at the opposite solstice around December 22nd. The zodiac is a band of sky lying 6 degrees either side of the ecliptic, its width reflecting the maximum celestial latitude reached by the moon. The zodiac is divided into 12 30-degree signs, beginning with 0 degrees at Aries, the March equinox. The fourth sign, Cancer, begins at 90 degrees from the starting point of the zodiac. When the sun reaches this point, it is the June solstice. Similarly, the sun's ingress into Capricorn marks the December solstice. The zodiac is a means of measuring the sun's motion through the year. The signs were originally identified with the imagery of the constellations that lay behind them on the celestial sphere. However, it is important to distinguish that 12 equal signs, functions of the Earth-Sun orbital cycle, from the irregularity-sized fixed star constellations from which both their names and symbolism are derived. In the closing centuries BCE, the March equinox point fell at the border of the constellations Aries and Pisces. The 30 degrees of the sign Aries thus fell roughly over the fixed stars of the constellation Aries. However, this framework undergoes a small but cumulative change termed precession due to the slow rotation of the Earth's polar axis around the ecliptic pole, like a gyroscope, over 25,000 years. Each year, as the Sun returns at the 0 degrees Aries, its position against the background stars will have slipped back 15 minutes of arc and 1 degree in 72 years. At the dawning of the third millennium, this motion has produced a discrepancy of nearly a whole constellation. Our modern sign Aries now falls over the stars of Pisces. This leads to the symbolism of the great ages. As we are now in the closing era of the age of Pisces, we will soon follow the March equinox point backward into the age of Aquarius. I find this already quite interesting. I have heard about the age of Pisces and age of Aquarius that we are supposed to change, and obviously it's because the Earth's magnetic, or I don't know, true north is different from celestial north, right? And because the Earth has that tilt of 23 degrees, it's also why we kind of make a circle around the celestial sphere. I find this very interesting, for example, regarding the North Star or Polaris, which we now guide ourselves by, meaning that it will be fixed or kind of very close to the fixed point of sky that more or less points towards the geographical north. And when people say that, oh, it points to the north, perhaps, I mean, obviously some of you may know, some of you may not, but I find it very interesting because there are many myths that are related to these stars, or kind of like I don't know, the center of the universe, as the ancient people used to refer to it. It is because the sky, like every other constellation and stars, they do rotate, but that point stays fixed. And that's why it is so useful, right? Because obviously if it would rotate, so meaning that, I mean, obviously it's us, the Earth, that it is rotating, right? However, the way that we are rotating at certain points of time, depending on which section, you know, the tilt of Earth is pointing to, there are different stars that can be used as reference. But sometimes there are no stars. Quite a few centuries ago, we did not have Polaris was not at the point of sky that was fixed, and therefore people would not necessarily be able to guide themselves to the north by that star. Many other centuries ago, Vega was the star pointing to the north. And a few other stars that cross that section that then stays and all the other stars move. If you ever seen those pictures where like the long exposure pictures where the stars move and it kind of forms like a circle with the dot in the middle. I will perhaps place it here just to make it easier for you to understand. But I find it fascinating. And again, there are even legends in several cultures throughout the world that mention kind of the death of this star because it wasn't visible. So let's say it was Vega before, and then Vega, the Earth tilt moved us, so Vega was not pointing or was not in that center, right? And therefore people were like, oh my god. And they're like full-blown myths that speak about it. And again, I find this so fascinating. There are so many other myths and stories that include the change of the skies, the constellation that are present during certain months. As another example, the constellation of Orion is very much visible during winter months. And this constellation is kind of related to several gods, such as Osiris from Egypt and a couple of others. And then the time when Orion is not visible on the night sky, because obviously you can only see the stars during the night. So when it's not visible in the skies, it is supposedly the time when Osiris has to go into the underworld and stay there until he is able to come back and continue reigning the Egypt. But anyway, let's continue reading, and next chapter is the major constellations. Some man of yore thought he good to make the stellar groups, that by each other lying underlie they might display their forms, and thus the stars at once took names and rise familiar now. An excerpt from the 18th century translation of Aratus, 3rd century BCE text. In this section, the first rank and well-known constellation of both the northern and southern hemispheres are illustrated and explained both scientifically and mythologically. Of the 40 constellations treated here, only 2, Crux and Canes Venatici, were derived later than the formative classical period of Greco-Roman astrology and astronomy, 2 millennia ago, and one further figure, Carina, results from the modern division of a larger ancient constellation, Argo Navis. The naming and lore of individual stars often reflect the perception of later Persian and Arabic cosmographers, combining with the tradition handed down from Greece. To enter into the imagery of these figures is to pass through layers of history and culture towards the contemplation of ancient skies, a marvelous mythological realm. So I do believe now that we are going in alphabetical order, and the first one is Andromeda. And Andromedae, the Ethiopian princess. The chained figure of Andromeda is fully visible for all at latitudes as far south as 37 degrees. She lies due west of the constellation that represents her savior, Perseus, but is most easily located from the distinctive W of Cassiopeia, which lies immediately north. The head of the apparently falling Andromeda overlaps Pegasus at the horse's midriff, and the bright star here, Alpheratz, shares the northeastern corner of the square of Pegasus. The constellation's midnight culmination is in second week of October. Major stars: Alpha, Alperaz or Syrah is a blue-white star. Both its common names are derived from the same Arabic phrase, al-Surat, al-Faras, the navel of the horse. As this star was at one time considered part of Pegasus, However, Arabic astrology derived from Ptolemy the title Al-Ras al-Marah as Musal Salah. As always, I will be butchering names. Musal Salah, meaning the head of the chained woman. Second biggest star is Mirach, is a red star. The name is derived from Arabic for girdle. The third biggest star is Almach or Alamak, is an orange star. This star is named after a small animal similar to a badger, possibly derived from early Arabic or Persian sources. It makes the left foot of the girl. And the last element is the Andromeda galaxy. M34 is a spiral galaxy similar in construction to our own. It appears as a fuzzy elliptical path, and at a distance of 2.4 million light years, it is the farthest object visible to us with naked eye. I sometimes try to see if I can kind of see the fuzzy cloud of spirals. Obviously it's just in my head because while it is visible with the naked eye, it is just a dot, right? Like a fluffy dot in the sky. You can't really see it as like a picture of, galaxies. But, I still know that it's a galaxy, and I'm like, hey, I see you. Starlore. The background to the terrible events that result in Andromeda's being chained naked to rocks on the coast near Joppa, or Joppa, let's say Joppa, an ancient maritime city of Palestine, there we go, as an offering to the sea monster Cetus or Cetus, is told fully under Cassiopeia. As Andromeda lay helpless, Perseus, mortal son of Zeus, flew by on his return from his mission to slay the Gorgon Medusa. Some say that he was wearing the winged sandals given to him by Athene. Athene? This is the first time that I read it like that. Okay, fancy. It is Athene, the goddess of intellect and heroes. In other version, better suited to this group of constellation figures, he rode the winged horse of Pegasus. I was going to say, Perseus had the Pegasus helping him quite a few times, but anyway. Approaching the rocks, Perseus was entranced by Andromeda's virgin beauty. Of course, because you can clearly see just by looking at someone that she is a virgin beauty. And he offered to fight the sea monster in return for her hand in marriage. Cepheus, her father, agreed to this transition. Why wasn't this father doing anything? Why did it have to be Perseus to find the monster? Or was she being offered to the monster as a sacrifice, a virgin sacrifice? I wanted a chill reading. Apparently, we are not gonna get it. Agreed to this transaction. Confusing Cetus with his shadow on the sea, Perseus dealt the monster a fatal blow. He subsequently rescued Andromeda. The constellations involved in the Andromeda story can be seen in their relative positions in the sky on celestial map. So here we go, right? We have Andromeda and the Greek myth. What was up with that? Behind the frame of Greek myth, there is a darker and more puzzling root to this constellation. We see a hint of this in Andromeda's name, which means ruler of man. As the Latin poet Manilius remarks, the vanquisher of Medusa was vanquished at the sight of Andromeda. So perhaps she is not such a passive and innocent figure, but is closer to the goddess Aphrodite as a representative of female desire. This is borne out by the Mesopotamian roots of the Andromeda legend. In early times, this constellation was dedicated to the ancient Egyptian goddess of love and war, Astarte, known as Ishtar for the Babylonians. Astarte, iconographically shown as a sexually voracious sea goddess, was worshipped in various temples along the ancient shores of Palestine, the very shores of Andromeda's attempted sacrifice. And there we go, different stories for different Andromeda. Sometimes she's a poor, helpless virgin, and sometimes she is a very, very dangerous man-eating machine. Anyway, next constellation we have is Aquarius. Aquarius, the water carrier. Aquarius, the 11th zodiacal constellation, is comparatively difficult to trace, with no star brighter than third magnitude. It was anciently depicted as a figure pouring water from a jug into the Fluvius Aquarii, the river of Aquarius, which curves around beneath the water carrier toward the bright stars. Fomalhaut in Pisces, Austrinus. Fomalhaut remains a useful locator for Aquarius until today, and around 30 degrees northwest of this star we are able to recognize the distinctive small cluster marking the water jug. From Pegasus, the jug and the head of a man can also be located, lying to the south up against the head of the horse. The constellation culminates at midnight toward the end of August and early September. That's another thing that, how should I say it, always fascinated me was the fact that obviously the constellation that is kind of like currently ongoing, right? So for instance, now we have the season or the month of Aries, right? Which I am, okay? Is a coincidence. But Aries, it's not at its peak right now, and it will not be. Usually it's more visible during winter, actually, which is similar to the Orion highest position, because Orion is right next to Taurus and Taurus is right next to Aries. Anyway, there we go. Major stars in Aquarius are Sadal Melik, Sadal Sod, and Helix Nebula. I'm not gonna read into the names, but we're gonna go straight to the star lore. This constellation has carried a consistent mythical theme through various cultural transformations. The Babylonians in the 2nd millennium BCE showed the jar as the overflowing urn and associated Aquarius with their 11th month, equivalent to our January or February, called the curse of rain. The Egyptians saw the figure as representation of Hapi, god of the Nile, who distributed the waters of life in heaven and on earth. His urn symbolized good fortune. This analogy fits the fortune associated with several of the stars by the jug and the waterman's hat. Late European representation of the water carrier often show him as a bearded man, mature in his years. However, the classical treatment is quite different. For the Latin poet Manilius, He is the youth who pours, whom once the eagle carried off from earth. This refers to the Greek myth of the boy Ganymede, whose name means rejoicing in virility. Why does it always have to do something with the son of King Tros of Troy? Ganymede was the most beautiful youth alive and was chosen by the gods to be forever young as the bearer of the golden cup of divine nectar. In later versions, Zeus, and in Roman myths, Jupiter, the king of gods, desired the boy. Of course, because... But you know what? I like that. At least we have bisexual representation coming from Zeus. You know, he did not discriminate. He could just go after anyone. Disguised as an eagle of Aquila, Zeus is said to have carried Ganymede up to Olympus to become his personal cup-bearer. I was going to say something, but I'm gonna hold. Let's keep this PG-13. Unsurprisingly, Zeus's abduction of Ganymede caused repercussions on Mount Olympus. The arrival of the youth as cup-bearer displaced Hebe, goddess of youth and daughter of Hera, Zeus's queen. Hera was angered by the insult to Hebe and by her shame at Zeus having fallen in love with the boy. This attitude enraged Zeus, who glorified Ganymede by setting him amongst the stars. And there we go. Aquarius myth is joined with Ganymede, which is also a moon to Jupiter. Makes sense, you know, cupbearer to Jupiter was Ganymede. And, you know, now that I'm making the connections. And there we go. Next constellation is Aries. Ari or Arietis, the ram. Aries is the first zodiacal constellation. But despite its mythological significance, the figure which lies to the west of Taurus is not distinctive, apart from the close group of 3 stars, marking the head of the ram. Hamal, or Ari, lies on the meridian north-south line, which runs up to the North Pole from this star through Almag in Andromeda, and Segin in Cassiopeia. Extrapolating the same line southward to the equator brings us a few degrees west of Mira of Cetus. Major stars are Hamal and Sheratan. And yeah, we have like 3 stars in the constellation. I like it. I mean, you know, it's easy, not too crowdy. Crowdy? Is that even a word? Not too crowded, you know, like, oh my gosh, identifying all the stars. No, there are 3 stars. Period. I feel like that matches the Aries energy. But like from my point of view and going a bit into the zodiac itself, I'm not saying that I do believe that, you know, like Aquarius and people born under that star constellation or sign or whatever, or Aries, you know, identifying with certain characteristics of the sign. I'm not saying that I absolutely agree with that, but I do think that the space itself has a great influence on us, on the planet, on all the living things and unliving things such as rocks, oceans, etc. And I mean, there are studies that we don't have to even go into studies, right? We can just go to the moon or to the sun. Both influence so many things on Earth, right? And I'm not going to say like, hey, during the full moon there are more crimes and stuff like that, although statistic does show that that is true. However, just a simple kind of thing like the tides and everything, the sun having the radiation and just overall gravitational pull on us as well, and also like the other planets within our solar system, depending on their position, there is quite a huge interference as well in terms of radio waves and other things. So let's say depending on the position of Moon, Sun, Jupiter, Saturn, etc., there could be certain interferences on Earth itself, stuff like that. So I'm not saying that, depending on when you are born and because you are born under the constellation of Aries, that you are going to be a certain way. But I am saying that we do have influence coming to us from space. I don't know what kind of influence that is, okay? But it's not completely kind of ridiculous. Someone's saying that astrology is a complete sham. I don't think so. I think that there are many details involved. Again, I do believe that the positions of the planets is more influential than the constellation itself. But it's just my opinion. Okay. Now let's go into the Starlore of the Ram or Aries. Making the March equinox point, Aries was held in high status in the formative period of Greek sky lore. The Roman poet Manilius declared it the prince of all the signs. The Assyrians of the upper Tigris, who would sacrifice a ram in honor of the equinox, knew the constellation was altar and sacrifice. In Greek lore, Aries represents the legend of the Golden Fleece. According to the poet Apollonium of Rhodes, King Athamus of Boeotia married Nephele. Athamus became disenchanted with his wife and remarried. His new wife, Ino, saw the children of the king's previous marriage, especially the boy Phrixus, as a threat to her own offspring. She therefore wickedly devised an ingenious scheme to bring about the child's death. She went secretly to the stores of corn seed kept for sowing in the spring and scorched the precious grains. The resulting crop failure threatened the population with starvation. Athamus sent a messenger to the oracle of Delphi, but Ino had already bribed the emissary, who returned saying that the oracle required the young prince as a sacrifice before the corn would grow again. Phrixus was duly prepared for sacrifice, but hearing the desperate prayers of Nephele, Hermes, the messenger of the gods, intervened and sent a wonderful ram with a fleece of gold to snatch the boy from the altar. Phrixus had a sister, Helle, who was also rescued by the ram. But as a magical beast crossed the narrow straits that separate Europe and Asia, Helle fell to her death. From that time on, these straits were called the Hellespont, Sea of Helle, in her memory. The ram brought Phrixus to the land of Colchis, on the shores of the Black Sea. Here, Phrixus, in gratitude for his salvation, sacrificed the ram to Zeus, Jupiter in Roman myth, and gave its golden fleece to the king Aeetes of Colchis. Aeetes had the fleece protected by a dragon in a sacred grove of the war god Ares, or Mars. Just as in later astrology, the zodiacal sign of the ram is placed under the dominion of the war god. The fleece remain in the grove until stolen by the hero, Jason. And there we go, the legend of Aries. I think it's interesting that the ram is saving someone because there are quite a few things in like Aries characteristic that name Aries kind of the warrior, the savior of the unjustly affected people and stuff like that. And again, this is me kind of looking into myself. I do have a very strong sense of justice that I can not always uphold, which affects me very much. But anyway, I think it's kind of interesting, all of these sections about the sea, about the sister, why the strait in between the continents was called like that. I think this is the part of mythology, connecting mythology to the stars. This is what makes it interesting, at least to me. I'm going to go on another deviation, and maybe then I'm going to choose one more constellation to read through, and then we're gonna leave it for some other time, otherwise this video is going to be too long. You know that I like mythology very much. I mean, many videos about mythologies are present for you to see on my channel. But obviously there is various layers to mythology. And this is the layer of astronomy, astrology, etc. So the constellations were there. We already know that they change slightly depending on the season, depending on the position of the tilt of the earth, etc., etc. And we are very much familiar with those. However, we not only are familiar with those, we create stories about those. And those stories then help us kind of identify certain things. Going back to the Orion, the great hunter for the Greeks, and Osiris for the Egyptians. The Egyptians went so far into that myth, reflecting the presence of Orion in the sky, that it guided them through their agricultural processes. So every time that Osiris disappeared or appeared, they calculated, okay, this is the time to start planting our crops and stuff like that. So it was very important for this story to be passed down generation after generation, because obviously if you plant your crops too late or too early, your well-being will be dependent on that. So it's very important story, right? That Osiris dies, go into the underworld, and then comes back. And once he's back, I don't know what's the situation, but I know that once he's back, then they plant or whatever. And during the months that Osiris is not visible, the scorpion is visible. And I think the period that the scorpion is visible is shorter, and then there's another mythology associated with that. We might go to scorpion next. Just, to clarify this. But what I want to say is that many things that are told in mythology are based on something very important and very real. So reading those between the lines was always something that I wanted to do. And having all these layers to the mythology and how they translate from one mythology into another, into the next one, and then to the modern world interpretation is something that I appreciate very much. Okay, and as promised, I'm going to read about Scorpio next. So the constellation Scorpius, Scorpii the Scorpion. Commonly known as Scorpio, Scorpius is 8th zodiacal constellation. It lies across the Milky Way, with Ophiuchus to the north and Lupus and Ara to the south. The body stretches well south of the ecliptic, making this a magnificent constellation for equatorial and southern observation, culminating at midnight in June. It loses impact above mid-latitudes north, where the distinct hook of its tail and sting becomes faint and indistinguishable at the horizon. Major stars are Antares. Antares is one of the biggest stars, is a red giant. Exactly, a supergiant, 400 times the diameter of the Sun, 170 light years of distance. Its brightness fluctuates over the 4-year cycle. In latitude 5 degrees south, it is an ecliptic marker, one of the 4 royal stars, heavenly watchers of Mesopotamia, forming a great cross on and near the ecliptic. The other stars are Aldebaran, Regulus, and Fomalhaut. Antares means rival to Ares, or equivalent to Ares. Ares being the Greek form of Roman Mars, the red planet. The star is occasionally Cor Scorpii, heart of the scorpion. See what I mean? Like, this is so cool. Because in the zodiac, okay, not that I'm like a huge connoisseur of astrology, okay, but indeed Scorpio and Aries are actually personalities that clash or have a certain rivalry. And there's also kind of another thing that obviously Aries being ruled by Mars, who is the god of war and stuff like that, is also said to be, kind of a fighting figure. And obviously who can fight against Aries is Scorpio. Personally, I don't know. I have quite a few friends who are Scorpio, although in terms of men, I have met quite a few Scorpio men in my life. And okay, let me be in peace. Honestly, I don't know why. It kind of feels to me like a punishment. I don't know if I did something in my past life to a Scorpio or something. I feel like it's a karmic punishment because I really do have a lot of Scorpio people surrounding me, and especially men that I don't want around. Seriously. It's like every time when I was younger, every time somebody was interested in me, it was a Scorpio. And I was like, oh my gosh, but why? Why? Why me? Anyway, but I really like the star Antares. You can see it during the summer month the best. So what I'm thinking is that Scorpio is visible during the summer for 3 or something month, maybe less, maybe more, and then Orion takes over. But Antares is a really big star. You cannot miss it. It's very close to the horizon during the summer. Being so big and so red, it's clearly distinct from all the other stars. So I'm not surprised that it's one of the 4 royal stars from Mesopotamia either. But let's go to the star lore. In Maori tradition, Scorpius represents the fish hook shown by these carved jade beads of the ancestral hero Maui. One day, while fishing, Maui caught and pulled up from the ocean a piece of land. Gradually, the edges of this land became serrated, so much so that the land broke in two. This is how New Zealand came into existence. The hook dislodged from the island with such force that it flew into the sky, where it has remained ever since. See how interesting it is? In some corners of the world, Scorpio or the hook from Maui created New Zealand. Very nice. The Lucida of this ancient constellation, Antares, mark the place of the sun at the September equinox, at the beginning of Mesopotamian civilization, some 5 millennia ago. In Egypt, the stars of Scorpio were for a period seen as serpent. The figure was once much larger. In the classical Greek and Roman periods of the first centuries BCE, the scorpion's huge claws included the stars that now form Libra. Scorpius has always suffered a baneful reputation. In some accounts of Greek myths, the earth goddess Gaia commanded the scorpion to sting Orion, who was then revived by Aesculapius. In the turning sky, as Scorpius rises in the east, Orion dies in the west. The subsequent rising of Orion is his restoration. As he appears in the east, Scorpius sets, crushed by Ophiuchus. Bit disappointing. There's nothing else there. Next we have the Taurus constellation already. But there we go. And they do mention Orion. I think that I'm gonna save Orion for the next time. As I think that the story of Orion, or the star lore of Orion, is going to be quite a bit, hopefully, because I was hoping for a bit more time with Scorpio here, not in real life, but in books. But there we go. This is the star lore for the constellations that we have for today. I hope you enjoyed this reading. I have like a small, I don't even know what to call it, announcement. No, it's not an announcement, just kind of like FYI. For the people who watch me frequently, here's a notice for you. If you don't want to listen about like my life updates or how am I feeling, or I don't know. Also, disclaimer, I'm going to say some maybe less positive things. So if you like to leave now, please do. But what I wanted to mention is a bit difficult for me to say, and you may have noticed it in my videos and the frequency of me posting. I am kind of trying to put like a better face throughout my videos, although I'm not feeling that well. There's nothing wrong with me, health-wise or physically, but my mental health is not doing so well, and so I'm not feeling very much inspired to film the videos. I found this book and I was thinking, hey, I really like this. Why don't I try to film a video? And so here we are. I will obviously try to continue with my videos as frequently as I can. I'm sorry, it is difficult for me to mention this, and I'm not even sure if I'm going to include this in the video. And I'm not even sure if you are interested, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Yeah, I think that the current situation of the world is affecting me much more than I would like to admit. And so every day is a kind of a struggle, just seeing everything unfolding and kind of in a way not seeing much of a future or kind future. Anyway, I'm not gonna cry, hopefully. But I just wanted to say that if you, I don't know, if you have any suggestions of videos for me to do, that would be helpful. Of course, only if I can make it happen. But I would appreciate your comments. I think that maybe if people tell me, hey, I would like to see this, or I would like to hear you reading this, or for you to talk about this or that, I think that would give me a bit more of motivation to just, sit and film. Because as I said, at the moment, I'm not feeling very much inspired, and most of the days I barely have energy to make it out of bed and to go to work and stuff like that. So obviously I don't want to kind of reflect or project this negative energy towards you. I hope all of you are doing well, and I only wish you good things, as much good things as for everyone else. I would just like the world to, I don't know, be a bit more tolerant and gentle with everyone. But there we are. So anyway, please don't take it upon yourself to kind of feel like this was a call for help or anything like that. I'm just saying this because, again, my videos are very all over the place at the moment, and obviously there are quite a few of you that might be watching them all the time. So I wanted to let you know that this is just something that I'm going through, and please don't feel sorry for me or pity. This is not a request to pity me. I already do that all the time to myself, okay? And then it just ruins my day. So yeah. Okay. I don't know how that went. I will see in the editing if that makes any sense or not. Again, it's not a call for help, even though I am under my big sad blues. I'm still here, and I will be probably hopefully for some time. But yeah, just hoping that everyone is doing well on the other side of the screen as well. Anyway, thank you so much for coming to my TED Talk. No, not really. I don't want to make, I usually do make jokes around my depression and stuff like that, but it's something that helps me. So don't take it personally or anything like that. But yeah, thank you for joining the video today. I hope that you enjoyed it. Again, I enjoyed the theme of the book. That's why I got it, and that's why I decided and was able to find the motivation to film the video. And again, we can come back to this next time. Okay, I think I'm gonna stop now and good to go. Thanks again for joining, and I will see you next time.